Yeah, the Shanghai Cooperative Organization between Russia and China is openly drilling to go into southern and northern Korea. The whole world is gearing up for fireworks on every front. It's all happening now, just like in the lead up to World War I and World War II. And it's not just Alex Jones saying this. Any geopolitical strategist who's worth 10 cents of salt can tell that we better buckle up. Buckle up, because you ain't seen nothing yet. The world is going into controlled, orchestrated chaos. But, John, in Texas, I think you answered your question with the statement you made. Yes, they're gearing up for what appears to be an engineered regional conflict, but done in multiple regions of the planet, engineered, controlled World War III to bring in the global government.
I was in the infantry in Vietnam in 1970, and we were fighting the Chinese by proxy. We were killing Chinese advisors that were leading NVA patrols when I was over there. And I think they wanted to engineer the destruction of our firebase ripcord. It was totally, annihilated. And you've seen how they behaved in the Korean War. They burned our prisoners of war alive in the Chosin Reservoir. They overran medical teams and burned all the prisoners alive, and they backed the Khmer Rouge. And you've seen how they treated their people at Tiananmen Square. I mean, if they were to ever get into this country or whatever, I know how they'd behave.
Oh, this country's for sale. The globalists 30 years ago had made the decision to have Europe be their new Western command base, but their Eastern command base is China. And according to the globalist, and you now see that in the headlines, America is gone. You won't recognize America. They're letting you know. We raped you. We stole everything. Now we're going to totally get rid of you. And it's just, and the average cop says, I don't care if I'm going down with the ship. At least I get to boss some slaves. And so we're just going to sink unless we wake up to how pathetic we are and admit we're slaves. And only by admitting how pathetic we are can we ever get our past freedom and glory back. But no, China is the model. It's the Chinese century. Doesn't mean the Chinese people, but it means their slave masters, because they've got the best slave system, have been chosen as the apple of the New World Order's eye. I appreciate your call, John. Let's talk to Matt in Indiana. You're on the air.
Mr. Jones.
Hey, buddy.
I think it's no coincidence leading up to the oil rig thing, we had all those coal mine disasters. And I think it's almost a silver bullet, but to decriminalize and legalize hemp would reindustrialize our nation and quit putting people in prison.
It really would, because it's better than cotton, it's better than polyester. It's a miracle product, but you know what? People would rather have asbestos in their house, and they'd rather have polyester, and they'd rather have petrochemicals. So you know what? Again, George Washington grew it, and the Constitution's written on it, but it's evil. Okay.
And I'd like to give a little rundown of the police state city that I live in, Evansville, Indiana, home of the Liberty Dollar. Since '94, the JROTC was military recruiting in the schools. Cameras on the buses. Indiana has a secure ID. We got 2 chains of gas stations here scanning IDs for cigarettes. We got facial recognition cameras at the airport and the license branches.
Now, I've always found Indiana is top of the food chain in police state. Every time evil pops up, it's Indiana. And see, Indiana's got great folks. Going back over 20 years, they did an analysis and found that Indiana was just full of great people, just like Idaho or Utah or Texas. Wherever they know there's good Americans, they move the grid in.
We have an Indiana Department of Homeland Security mobile command center parked on a street here in Evansville, Indiana.
Oh, making sure the slaves, you're milk cows, man. And when they're done using you up for milk, they're going to slit your throat. And they've got devil dog troops ready to kill you and ask for seconds. Hoorah! It's good to butcher America. We're live, ladies and gentlemen. Simulcasting the syndicated radio broadcast at prisonplanet.tv. Thank you for joining us. I'm going to cover a bunch of news right now until later in the hour. Then we'll open the phones back up at 1-800-259-9231 for everyone that is patiently holding around the country and the world who is tuned in. Okay, before I get into the political realignment happening here in the United States and in other parts of the globe, before I get into the economy, I want to cover North Korea because it all integrates together. It was Vladimir Lenin, who said that there are times in history when more happens in a week than happen in a year, and when more happens in a year than happened in the previous 100 years. And we are definitely in that time frame right now, but because of the convergence of technological developments, population, communication, and high-powered military hardware, and other factors all combining together now, you're not going to see a decade of rapid change and accelerated change by orders of magnitude. You're going to see, from here on out, a quickening with all of the benefits and dangers of high technology, life extension. The issue is, though, the ruling global elite, from their own statements and white papers, the ruling global elite that are in control of society right now have disdain for the general public. They think of you as scum and trash. They don't even want to dumb you down or enslave you further. They want to set up a global police state so they can then exterminate you. And this is their stated goal. We've covered it ad nauseum with my film, Endgame, Blueprint for Global Enslavement, and other documentaries. And we've read their publications and quotes here on air over and over and over again. And so if you're a new viewer or listener and you're laughing about this, you'd better do a little research, say at whatistheendgame.com or endgamethemovie.com, and read the full bibliography for the 2.5-hour film, and check all the facts and claims for yourself. You might want to read Eco-Science, written by the White House Science Czar, 1,100 pages. You might want to read the 900 pages of Tragedy and Hope. You might want to read The Secret Team by Colonel L. Fletcher Prouty, now back in print, by the way, available at Infowars.com. Of course, Eco-Science and Tragedy and Hope are written by top globalists from their perspective of how they got to have a planetary dictatorship to then kill you, to do it as humanely as possible, sterilize you with the fluoride, but that's not enough. You can read the head Pentagon liaison, and they don't deny this, it's on record, between the Pentagon and Black Ops, Bay of Pigs, you name it, where he details everything that Joseph McCarthy said was true. Everything and more. And of course, the Russians in the last decade have declassified their McCarthy files, and you've seen the headline in the New York Times, McCarthy was right. But now it's quaint and funny. Kind of like a decade ago, time sure flies, I was watching History Channel, and they had the 90-plus-year-old former CIA section chief on from 1949 who was over China and also Indochina, not just China proper, but also over Vietnam. And he bragged and said, yes, we put Mao Zedong in power. We didn't like Chiang Kai-shek, but we couldn't tell the public that at the time because communism was unpopular. Now, I literally almost fell out of my chair. Just like when I heard BBC admit our government grows and ships out the opium out of Afghanistan last year. I almost ran off the road listening to XM. Because I already knew this, but to hear Kermit Roosevelt 6-7 years ago on NPR, it was a tape after he died. He died in 99, CIA commander, 53, with Schwarzkopf's daddy overthrowing Iran, bragging that they staged terror attacks and used radical Muslims to overthrow Mohammad Mossadegh. Again, I already know all of this, but to hear him brag about it, knowing that the public's so dumbed down and so pathetic that they can now have Geraldo Rivera go on Fox and talk to Marine Corps commanders with the troops gathered around going, you're growing the opium here. Tell us why. Well, we have to grow it or Al-Qaeda will get it. So we got to help the farmers grow it and ship it out. We don't cover conspiracy theories here on this show, ladies and gentlemen, 99% of the time. If we get into numerology and the occult and how the elite are obsessed with it, yes, but only because that's what they're into. It's all conspiracy, no theory. But rereading The Secret Team, because Jesse Ventura recommended I reread it. He had just read it and was blown away by it. Paradigm shifting for him. Then I told Ventura off air, I said, now you got to read Tragedy and Hope. You know, don't just read somebody on the inside who was against it. Read somebody from the inside who was for it. But what does this have to do with North Korea? Everything.